but it is still a real material and in some cases careful feature which was very pertinent for the reception, for interpretation in that time, and which still remains pertinent in a historical perspective.
Well, I tried to suggest that, that Beckett was, he was down in southern France during the war. He was in the French resistance. He didn't make a big deal of that, but the materiality of it he knew quite well. It was Duchamp. When Duchamp was still in Paris, it was he and Beckett and his wife Suzanne lived with them for a short period of time, so that they knew something about what it was to be involved in what was happening in France during the war. And they were protected in Duchamp, and they used that apartment for a while, but then they sneaked out to, what's the Italian? Roussillon, where he had a place. He was there, and he worked sort of secretly with the French resistance. And then he actually chauffeured things at one point. Just had a very commonplace kind of job, just to work out in a physical, material way. Of course, at that time, he wasn't known the way he was afterwards.
Souzde teologové, souzde filozofové, nemusí diskusi zachraňovat jenom pouhý lingvista.
About the issue of thinking, that takes many forms of interpretation in my own work. My theater in San Francisco, which was known for doing very avant-garde plays at that time, Beckett, Victor, Bernard, Jean Genet, both people at that time, as well as certain new playwrights. But in the last theater work I did, which was another group called the Cercle group, and the work was very, very different from that, even though that was sort of considered avant-garde. The Cercle group was totally different. It would take me too long to explain its methodology. I was saying yesterday, and I'm here talking about theater studies. Tomorrow, because they seem to be reading books of mine there. But the Franz Kafka apparently lived here quite a while ago. He wrote German, and we had a technique we called burrowing. What's the Czech word for burrow? Nope. Yeah, they made up a story, but it's a story by Kafka. And it became a technique, but, and I just abbreviate this, we worked in a certain improvised way for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I might not say anything, which is hard for me, for a certain period of time, but they would be improvising things and it would take too long to explain what they were doing. And the actors in that group were trained in such a way that they could literally perform standing on their heads, flying in the air. They could do things that athletes and gymnasts could do, and they could perform that way. We saw a thing last night. They could move, but they couldn't move like the people in the Prague group could move. And they would improvise, and it would be very strange improvisations, people relating to each other in odd ways. And it was also verbal, highly verbal at the same time. How many of you know Stanislavski? Stanislavski, where actors, you're supposed to have an emotional memory, you're supposed to feel it. If you don't feel it, it's not true. But it's not Stanislavski method. So if every now and then we might be working for, say, 2-3 hours or something, and suddenly one of the actors in the group would stop and turn to me and say, Herb, I don't feel this. I would get furious. I said, I don't care what you feel. Your fucking feelings don't mean anything. What we're doing here is thinking. We're trying to understand this. The method is to think it. It doesn't mean there are no feelings. Remember that, that binary that we usually have between thinking and feeling. It's plenty of feeling, act and then thought. That's why I wrote a book called Blooded Thought. And remember I mentioned at the outset, the title of which came out of a poem by Wallace Stevens, my book, Blooded Thought. An abstraction blooded as a man by thought. An abstraction blooded as a man by thought. All right, have an idea that just, I think it has some of that.
How did Project Beckett on criticism?
He didn't read criticism. And I learned not to do that also. When I had a partner, Jules Irving, but I was making this joke about Jules. The newspapers come out, the critiques come out, and all I had to do, Jules would tell me that, all I had to do is take one look at Jules and I knew what the reviews were. You try, if you're doing a certain kind of art, at least in my mind, for me, your temperament may be different, I don't know. It's just as well to stay away from reviews. I'm doing this. I'm doing this best I can. In fact, I used to think of what we did as sort of like, how many of you know the Japanese no drama? In the no drama, a very ritualistic drama, they think of performance as an offering. You offer this. And I used to say, we do this work, we do it as far as we can, we devote our entire lives to doing it, we think it out something as best we can, and then we present it like an offering. And you can take it. I can't keyword then. I can't worry about what you think. But if you want to talk about it in some civilized way, that's a different thing. But reviews are not.
But instead of reading critics, you are regarding people.
No, critics. I've written criticism, but I'm talking now about newspaper. What he's talking about criticism. Literary criticism. He would see and know many of the people gave him his books. And I must say that I never gave him one of my books until he had given me, toward the end of his life, the manuscript of one of his last works, Worship of Hope. I think I alluded to it here, and he gave it to me. I think you were there, Captain, my wife was there, and I decided I would give him a book. And he was very moved by it, but I don't know whether he ever read it. He was quite moved by it.
You mentioned Kafka earlier, and in the Metamorphosis, loss of language acts as sort of dehumanization of Gregor Samsa. Do you think, or you would probably know that Beckett was inspired by Kafka and how his dealing with language related to Kafka's?
I don't recall him talking about Kafka. Maybe he did. I knew him for about 30 years. But I can't remember his mentioning Kafka. I'm certain that he knew Kafka. He read very widely, but he only had a couple of books on his shelves when you go to see him. Aside from that, Scotch whiskey, that was it. But the one was Samuel Johnson. I don't know whether you know, an 18th century writer, Samuel Johnson. That book was always there.
Well, just to follow that Kafka line, I have read somewhere that he disliked being asked about his relation to Kafka, but nevertheless, I have read in one interview that he said something in that sense that Kafka is not radical enough for him. He said something like, well, his hero is lost, but he still has coherence of purpose. And his hero is not falling to bits, while my heroes are falling to bits. So, do you find Beckett more radical